while you're just as likely to get parasites when you're younger, it has a greater impact when you're older. And they can make you grind your teeth at night, for example. They can
The
give you
parasites
itchy.
can?
Yes.
Evil little bastards.
Yeah. Well, it's the muscle tension. So they're active at night, the parasites, and they impact the muscle tension.
Hold up. I think Karen needs a minute to absorb this.
Dinah, I don't know
Hold
about
up.
this. I don't know about this.
You're connecting these things with other physiological functions. You're not thinking about parasites.
I certainly am not.
I am definitely not thinking about parasites when I'm sleeping.
I have chickens, and that's all those visuals are all I can think of because, chickens get parasites and worms and all this crazy stuff. And I am so disturbed.
Okay, if we start talking about worms in the brain, I'm out.
Welcome to Drinks with the Girls. Conversations for women over 40 around connection, change, and the power of female friendship. Living well with stories to tell. I'm Karen, and this is Lisa.
We are moms and solopreneurs stepping into our own, diving into real conversations about things that matter to women in midlife.
We're here to spill the tea on everything that affects women in their 40s and beyond. Topics like loss and grief, changing relationships, launching kids, menopause, and reinventing ourselves in midlife. We are here to tackle it all.
Connect with us through a blend of our lived experiences, our friendship, the memory of our moms, plus a collection of real stories, honest conversations, and engaging interviews that will make women over 40 feel seen and remind them that they're not alone on this journey called life. Let's go.
Welcome back to another episode of Drinks with the Girls. I am very excited about this topic today because although we've touched on the topic itself, we are going to head in a different direction that we haven't talked about on this podcast. So just to keep you on the edge of your seat, I'm going to leave that there.
You're so good with the cliffhangers, my friend.
Yes, I am. What I need to do is let you know what I'm drinking before we really get into it. So I am drinking my new favorite. It's by Green Cheek. It's a hard seltzer.
Over more.
Which
to
way?
The right. Your other right, yeah. Green
And
geek.
It's a Paloma.
Green geek or cheek? Oh, Green Cheek.
Green Cheek. This is Pierre's Paloma. So this little guy on here is Pierre. Dinah, I'm all about the labels.
To your right.
I think you guys saw it.
Is it alcoholic or non-alcoholic? There you go. Yeah, is it alcoholic or non-alcoholic?
Hard seltzer.
Sweet.
Yes, so that is what I'm drinking. It's delicious. It's my new favorite.
See, I gotta just start ripping you off because whenever I try to go on my own, it ends horribly wrong.
Well, sad story, but it makes me kind of smile. So my father recently passed away, and the Green Cheek Brewery is right across the street from the mortuary.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God.
So the times that Tony and I have had to go to the mortuary to do things, obviously not fun things. I'm like, okay, we're going to Green Cheek. So anyway, and then I discovered Pierre's seltzer. So thanks, Dad.
Nice.
So Lisa, what you got?
Well, it's been a day, so I'm needing to chill. So I am drinking some dream tea, Arbonne dream tea, and there's valerian root and I think milk thistle and I don't know, drugs. Hopefully it'll chill me out. So I'm just needing a basic chill. So that's what I'm going with tonight.
You're needing some Zen. Okay. Mm-hmm. Well, today we are talking to Dinah Vink, and I'm going to let her tell you all the goodies about who she is and what she does and what she's drinking. But we are very excited about this conversation today because she actually understands what is happening beneath all the questions that we ask ourselves during perimenopause and menopause. Who am I? What's going on? I don't recognize myself. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I losing my mind? All those things. I don't know. Is it just me? Those are questions I've asked myself.
How did I get in the handbasket?
Dinah's going to dive into that today. But before we get going, I'm going to have her and let me give you her fun title. She is a certified integrative health practitioner and the founder of Holistic Nutrition Lifestyle. So Dinah, give us a little tidbit about who you are, what you do, and of course, what you're drinking.
Okay, let's start with what I'm drinking. I've got here an orange mango infusion, which is
Ooh.
absolutely
Ooh.
delicious. And I actually live in Panama, so we have lots of these things around. So it's quite easy to get. You just go down to the local fruit cellar, and there you go. So that's what I'm drinking.
Awesome. Very
Yes.
cool. Way cooler than what we have.
So what I do is, having been through a pretty miserable perimenopause myself, what I like to do is to help women try to avoid some of the challenges, shall we say, and some of the uncertainty and some of the confusion that I went through, and by using some proven techniques and using some tools that a lot of people have never heard of before.
We like things that nobody's ever heard of before.
And I think that's perfect because, we all traditionally, when something goes on, whether it's with perimenopause or with, a sinus infection, you go to your doctor and you're like, this is what's happening. And most times, I know Lisa and I both experienced it, when you go, doctors are like, okay, well, let's do these tests. Oh, okay. It's just a part of aging or getting older. And
Yeah.
so we love the fact that you and other practitioners like you really kind of look outside the box and try to figure out, okay, what's going on and how can we really actually do something about this, and instead of contributing to the crazy making that women are going through at this stage.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe so it sounds like maybe you you know a little bit about this with yourself and what you experienced. How did you get into this?
Well, I started noticing strange things happening for me. I was working as in the marketing department of a tech company in Canada, and I started thinking, this is very strange. My body is betraying me. It's always been pretty reliable. And what's going on? So and I'm active. I'm a very active cyclist. I cycle kind of, I don't know, 100 miles in a day for lunch kind of thing. I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. And I went to my doctor, and she just said, oh, well, you should get some exercise. And I'm going, okay, I already go to the gym 5 days a week. And then on the other 2 days, I ride my bike. And, that's just not an acceptable answer. And then a couple of months later, I started getting hot flashes, and that's when the penny dropped. So for me, the only thing I knew about perimenopause was that your periods change and that you get hot flashes. And I didn't know about the, 30, 40, 50 other symptoms that you can get. So then she threw some HRT at me, and I didn't know what I was measuring. It didn't help my hot flashes. I was still getting 30 to 50 hot flashes a day. So then she said, oh, well, if it's not helping you, then we'll take you off it. And so then I was, totally on my own. My coach at the gym, he put me on one of those boot camp exercises, right? And it just about killed me. I thought, this is definitely not the direction that we need to go. The nutritionist that I was working with just gave me a really bad, low fat, high carbohydrate, lots of processed food kind of diet. That was definitely not working for me. And so then I thought, okay, well, I'm on my own. I'm just going to have to figure this out. And so I dove into the research, and I started finding out lifestyle approaches that really could make quite a difference. And it did. Some of the challenges I was facing, meanwhile, is that I did not put myself forward for a promotion, which was a natural thing for me, as my company was acquired by another company. And their headquarters was in Europe, and I speak several languages, so I was quite prepared to go there and do that, except that with all this craziness going on in my body, I did not feel like I could handle it. I just thought, this is just too much. I don't know what to expect from myself, how, my whole leadership capability was being affected. My confidence was down, self-esteem, and I didn't really understand what was going on. So then with this research, it started to tone down. It started to get a lot better. And it's a good thing too, because it lasted for 13 years. So there was a lot, so I had to manage this, and it wasn't perfect. And I was sort of guessing at what was needed. And that's why when I found out about the integrative health practitioner practices and functional medicine testing, I just made a beeline for that, because I thought, yay, if we can figure out exactly what's going on, because the whole body gets affected when estrogen and progesterone start changing. You've got estrogen receptors all over your body, which I did not understand. And so this is why you're getting the full body experience, and not just some limited piece. And that's also why HRT is not a complete solution, because it only deals with the two sexual hormones, and not with all the other hormones and the other things that can get off balance when your estrogen and progesterone are changing. So it was sort of a trial by fire, I guess. And rather than sitting back and saying, this is what my new life is like, I thought, no, I'm not doing that. I've got to figure things out. So it's been a journey.
And I guess that's what some practitioners just think. They're just like, okay, this is just how it is to be in your 50s or however old you are, right? So I'm so appreciative of people like you that just at least open the door to something different, an alternative, because we're all different people. So it makes sense that HRT is not going to work for everybody. We all need something different based on what's going on in our bodies. And so I love this idea of the testing that you talked about, which I really want to dive into later. But can we just stay with this confidence piece for a second? And I'm sorry, you guys just humor me, because this really affected me so bad. And I literally didn't know what was going on. I could not do the things I normally could do. I could not juggle all the things I normally could juggle. I couldn't figure out things that I used to be able to figure out. And I thought, I literally was getting ready to go have like neurological testing. Like, okay, this is it. This is the early onset Alzheimer's. Here it comes, And so thank goodness, we're hearing more about perimenopause and menopause out in, the internet and, media and things like that, because it helps women not feel so crazy. But can you just talk a little bit about that piece and how damaging it is, I think, for women, and like what you see with, like high functioning women, professional women, or any woman actually who's just trying to keep her shit together.
Yeah, it's a big problem when it's this brain fog, right? So you're getting this neurotransmitter failure, and that's causing this brain fog to happen, and then your processing doesn't happen. That trying to juggle 5 things at once like you used to do doesn't really work that well. And so I had a client, a senior leader who had been to 3 doctors in 2 years, and she'd had complete, blood work and tests and everything, and they were, traditional doctors, and she had no relief at all. So she'd spent quite a bit of money on these processes and was no further ahead. And she was actually contemplating stepping back from her position because she felt so isolated, so alone. She was starting to question her own capabilities and just wonder, well, this is how it is, how it might be for me. And then when she saw a video that I had posted, and she contacted me, and we did a full like the what we call the big 5 tests, and then we were able to hone in exactly on what was going on. Right. So her hormones were a bit off. They weren't wild or anything. And yet she was still having all these symptoms. So we found out that she had thyroid problems. So that's one of the hormones that can get thrown off when estrogen is moving. And she had food sensitivities, which were causing a lot of inflammation, which causes system-wide problems. and that includes the gut brain connection, right? And so she was having a lot of issues. She had excess bacteria that was growing, and that bacteria can cross the blood-brain barrier, and that gives a lot of the brain fog and the confusion and the depression. She had a lot of joint pain. She had energy crashes, and it was pretty classic, really. From where I sit, that's not surprising that you'd have all these things, and of course her sleep was horrible. So after we found out what these things were, what these problems were, we could just hone right in on exactly how to supplement that. So what I do with that is look at some nutritional guidelines to start things off. We help with the sleep protocol, which is really important for everything. And then after we got past the first couple of weeks, then we could start in with some of the specialized supplementation. And just that's a temporary thing that usually we can stop after a few months, and the body can naturally normalize, rebalance. So that's a pretty classic story of what happens. And if you don't do the testing, then you could say, oh well, it sounds like this and it sounds like that, and maybe it is, but it's not the whole story, is what it boils down to. So you have all these systemic changes. Everything is interconnected, right? And so it becomes quite confusing for people to try and work on by themselves.
My name is Karen Shatafian, and I am a shameless coffee addict and empowerment coach for women, and my love language is authenticity. My mission is helping women unapologetically design a life they're in love with. Because what the hell are we waiting for? My website, KarenShatafian.com, has all my coaching packages and free offers like my Midlife Reclamation Guide. In it, you'll find tools to help you decide how to create the most inspired and empowered version of yourself and your life. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram talking about ways women can show up for themselves after decades of showing up for everyone else. Join me as we throw off the shackles and live our best freaking lives. See the show notes for all the details. Cheers.
We had a functional medical doctor on, a couple months ago, and we had a discussion about this idea that, traditional medicine is geared towards, what do you want to say, crisis management.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Versus a bigger picture. And so they're really trained to look for the one thing. I have a dear friend right now who is just going through the ringer and has been in bed for a week now because she's been seeking help forever and just being completely gaslit by her doctor. See a neurologist, see an endocrinologist. No, you can't get a referral. Yes, you can. Yeah. And she's bedridden, and they're basically telling her, oh, you have an infection, and essentially just kind of blowing her off. She's like, I am in pain. I can't move. My whole body is swollen. And they're basically telling her, well, you're not in that much pain. No, we're not going to do a hysterectomy because you haven't done this, 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 this. And essentially, you have to suffer more before we're going to look into that, which I think is criminal.
Yeah.
You could go down that whole road for a long time. So I think that I guess what I'm saying is I feel like a lot of times, especially with women, it may be a simple solution, but it's more complex in terms of the different body systems that it affects. And I think midlife, that really happens. So in your mind, what do you see as the main difference between what you do and what traditional medicine does, and how you're able to kind of, you talked about the story you just told being a typical thing. I guess, what are the typical things that women come to you with, and typically what have they been told by traditional medicine? I have an idea of what you're going to say, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Well, traditional medicine looks at the symptoms and then throws a pharmaceutical at it. So you're feeling depressed. Here's a mood enhancer. You can't sleep. Oh, here's a sleep medication. Your blood pressure's high. Oh, we got to get your blood pressure down. And what they're doing is they're suppressing the symptoms, which are actually messages, right? They're biochemical messages that your body is sending, and they're clearly not reading them, right? They're just reading them as something to address with a pharmaceutical. Whereas what I try to do, and the practice that I belong to, the integrative health practitioners, we look at what's the root cause of this. How come you are out of balance? What's going on? And we don't look for illness. We look for optimum health, right? Which is a kind of a different approach. And when you're looking at optimum health, then you have to be looking at the whole body. You can't just be looking at one particular place. And that's, I think, where traditional medicine falls down, is that it's the whole design is that there's a special doctor for every part of you. And they don't talk, of course, and you end up on this great big treadmill running around to see all these different doctors. And so the traditional medical system hasn't served me that well, but for emergencies, for critical care, they are fantastic, right? If you're in a car wreck or you break your leg or something, they do a fabulous job, and that's what they're good at. But when it comes to some of these,
It's like
especially
whack-a-mole with prescriptions.
yeah, right. Well, when you're dealing with multiple symptoms, then it suggests that you're dealing with multiple parts of the body, and you need to consider all that. You can't just say it's one thing. You're depressed. Here's an antidepressant. That's just not how it works. Yeah.
I was just thinking that I literally just had this light bulb moment when you said that, because you're so right. Like we are like dismembered almost when we go to the doctor. It's like, oh, I'm having, this pain, I'm having that. Like today I just went to the eye doctor, right? Instead of having someone that looks at the whole, looks at everything and how everything is connected and how I'm under a huge amount of stress right now. And it's like, I wonder if that is affecting my eyeball, which is a weird thing to think. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But it's just so interesting that you're so right. It's like, okay, yeah, if you're having gastro troubles, you go to the gastro doctor. If you're, having lady problems, you go to the lady doctor or whatever. But
we don't have generalists in this country.
No.
Dinah, without going down a rabbit hole, I've got 2 kids with multiple disabilities, and I always sadistically joke that I'm the best doctor they have because I'm the only one that has all the information. Nobody talks to each other. Nobody's comparing notes. They're just in their little silos, treating their little thing. And I think that does people a real disservice because, you don't have all the information.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I want to keep harping on that identity piece just a little bit, but because I think what happens with women when they start having these symptoms and start thinking that they make it about themselves and they start thinking that something is wrong with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is happening? Something is wrong with me. But can you just talk a little bit from your perspective as a practitioner, what is actually happening in the body? I know you mentioned the gut brain connection. So what is really happening in there that is, and I know you talked about the brain fog and that, that makes sense, but so bacteria can go from my gut to my brain and make it hard for me to think. Is that right?
Yeah. So what
the
bacteria does in your gut is it can make its way through the gut lining, and that's called leaky gut. And then it gets into the bloodstream, and then the bloodstream takes this undigested food and bacteria and whatnot, and it circulates it through your body. And that's more troublesome in some places than others, but that's where inflammation comes from, and that's where a lot of joint pain comes from, right? Which suddenly I remember getting, sort of falling down on the couch when I would get home from work, and I thought, I don't know if I can even get out, right? I mean, this is terrible. But so that can happen. Other things that can happen very commonly is parasites. And people don't talk about that very often, but parasites take hold when the body is vulnerable. And the body is vulnerable when it's out of balance, right? So while you're just as likely to get parasites when you're younger, it has a greater impact when you're older. And so that's a real problem. And you can get crazy symptoms from that, which are not connected with perimenopause, but of course they're indirectly part of the story. And they can make you grind your teeth at night, for example. They can
The
give you
parasites
itchy.
can?
Yes.
Evil little
Yes.
bastards.
Yeah. Well, it's the muscle tension. So they're active at night, the parasites, and they impact the muscle tension.
Hold up. I
So
think Karen needs a minute to absorb this. I think
Dinah, I don't
Yes.
know about
Hold up.
this. I don't know about this. I'm having a hard time. Okay.
yeah.
But I really want to hear this. Okay, so they're active at night. Keep going.
Yeah, and so you get itchy skin, which is another symptom that often happens with them. Of course, there's the digestive distress, but that can be a real problem. It can give you rashes and itchy skin. So you're connecting these things with other physiological functions. You're not thinking about parasites, but they're
No,
very common.
I certainly am not.
I am definitely not thinking about parasites when I'm sleeping. I can conscientiously affirm that is not what I think about before I go to bed. So go ahead.
I have chickens, and that's all those visuals are all I can think of because chickens get parasites and worms and all this crazy stuff, and I am so disturbed.
Okay, if we start talking about worms in the brain, I'm out. I'm just saying. Okay, so I have a question. I'm going to rescue Karen here. We'll get off the creepy crawlies now that everybody is going like this.
Wow.
When you talked about the big five, right, that you screen for, so talk to us about what that looks like when someone comes in and she's itching with parasites or brain fog or just falling apart, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Good question.
Well, with the big five, what we're doing is we're looking at different sorts of body samples. So we're not just using blood, but we also use saliva. We use stool. We use urine, and we use hair. So by having all these different samples, we're getting different angles on the body's condition, which is pretty helpful. And so we're looking for things like hormone imbalance, and then we're looking at the ratio between them. We're looking at the metabolic pathway. So one of the problems with getting a blood test only with to check on hormones, female reproductive hormones, is that they're very changeable, very dynamic. So one day they'll be very different than another day. Whereas if you look at the whole metabolic pathway, then you can see when they form and when they are ready to be excreted, and you can see that pathway of how they pass through your body. And sometimes they get stuck in your liver, right? So we can see that through the liver enzymes and what's going on with the liver. So that's an important organ to be looking at. We're also looking for things like candida and other bacterial problems, right? C. diff or whatever.
Candida is a lot more common than most people think.
It is, and it can be quite disruptive. We also look.
Sorry, can I ask a question? I just want to clarify something. So when you say the big five, I think in my mind I was going to the big five kind of general areas it could be. When you're saying the big five, you're talking about the things that you test.
That's right.
The modes that you test, the items that you test. Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. We're looking for food sensitivities. So not things that you're allergic to. You probably know that already, but there are a lot of food sensitivities that can take several days to actually be noticed. So then you don't attribute it back to the food that's causing it.
Hey there, I'm Lisa Corachella McDowell, your midlife Pacific Northwest princess, here to guide you in the art of next leveling your life. I'm passionate about women's health and wellness in midlife, especially for moms parenting kids with unique needs like I do. I truly believe we can learn, grow, advocate, and care for the planet while taking care of ourselves and our families. And I'd love to help you do the same. And I'm beyond excited to tell you about my membership for maxed out mamas just like me, the Empowered Parent Collective. It's a space for parents to confidently advocate for their kids, build inclusive communities, educate themselves, and find balance and support along the way. To find out more about the Empowered Parent Collective, my classes, wellness offerings, parenting tips, advocacy resources, and exclusive Drinks with the Girls goodies, head to nextlevellifewithlisa.com. Let's survive and thrive in the messy middle together.
Can I ask a question about that? I'm sorry, I'm interrupting your flow, but I'm very curious about this, and then I'll shut up. So I had food sensitivities done, and I don't know, for me, the jury was kind of out about whether or not they were accurate. I've also heard that some of the testing that gets done for that can be inaccurate because what it can pick up on is like, I'm not allergic to green beans, I've just had a lot of green beans this week, kind of a thing. So say a little more about that. Like, are there more reputable companies that do it? Like, what is your experience with that? Because I mean, I'm not saying I don't believe there are food sensitivities. I absolutely believe that. Yeah, so that's my question buried in there somewhere.
Yeah, there are definitely better tests than others, and in the integrative health practitioner practice, there's been one that's been identified as being, first of all, simple to do, and secondly, very reliable. So it probably costs a little more than others, but it's also been vetted and is very very helpful. So they check for 190 different food sensitivities in that test, and of course there's some that are very common, like eggs and dairy and wheat and that kind of thing. So then we do we're looking for heavy metals, and we get that from hair samples. So heavy metals can be quite they're very toxic within your system, and so if the most common would be mercury and lead, but there could be some others there too. So the idea is to be able to remove those to prevent some of that toxicity. And then we're also looking for inflammation through an omega-3 test to determine how your omega-3s are stacking up compared to the omega-6s. So usually you've got way more omega-6 in your body than omega-3. So pretty well everyone has to supplement with omega-3 in order to try and restore that balance. And that is super important for heart health. And of course, for women, once their estrogen drops, they suddenly become quite susceptible to heart problems. So so those are the 5 labs that we do, and it's quite a comprehensive test. There's a set of tests that can really reveal a lot about what's going on in your body. So that's how we do it.
I have a couple questions, and maybe you can give a little like what would be a typical protocol that you might suggest or prescribe in each of the areas of the big 5. But I'm curious about the mercury and the lead. Like how do we get that out of our environment, our system? And then also, is there a quick fix with the omega-3s? Like, is it just a matter of taking the fish oil? But can you maybe, in each little area kind of just touch on one thing you might suggest to one of your clients?
Sure. So one is with the stress, mood, and metabolism test. So with that one, it's a matter of figuring out what is your hormone level. So in sort of 70% of the cases, it comes out estrogen dominant. And that is part of the story. We want to look at the ratio, but when estrogen starts piling up in the body, it suggests that the liver is plugged up and is not able to process things as efficiently as it should be. So that's one of the things that we know. We need to do a detox to fix the liver, and that's usually where we start anyway. So that's one.
And what does that
With
detox look like?
It's some Ayurvedic herbs that are combined with an anti-inflammatory diet. So there's some eating. It's not like a juice cleanse or anything. It's a lot more focused, and it lasts anywhere from 7 to 21 days. And then we've got the Candida test. So that's a urine test. And if we've got an issue there, then we have a protocol that we provide, which ends up killing the bacteria and then removing them. So there's a binder to remove it. So just as with the parasites, you need to be able to remove that toxic material, because if it just stays in your body, then it becomes quite a problem for your body to deal with. With the food sensitivities, then we can quite easily identify, okay, these are the foods that you probably want to avoid. And you can try it out as a test for a while and see if you feel better, right? That's an easy way to confirm that it's working. With the minerals test, that was the whole heavy metal thing. I got rid of rosacea with the heavy metal test, which was pretty nice. And so that's one of the things that we can do. That's, again, it's Ayurvedic herbs with a binder to remove the heavy metals.
Say more about what rosacea is for people that don't know what that is.
Rosacea often happens on the face. It's the most common place for it to occur, and it's kind of like a rough skin, sort of reddish rough skin, and it sort of flares. It comes, it goes. It's not really acne. It's just sort of a flush, and so that can be troublesome. It's slightly more than cosmetic, but definitely it's a cosmetic issue. And you don't like running around with a bright red nose, so that goes to confidence and identity and all that. And then the omega-3 fish oil capsules is a really good one. I don't think there's been anyone that I've seen that I haven't recommended taking omega-3, especially because of the heart health. So you can eliminate up to 90% of your heart trouble or any kind of predisposition that's going on with your heart just by doing that, which is a pretty easy fix. So that's one of the supplements that doesn't stop after a couple of months. You end up, that's what we would call foundational, that you end up taking for the rest of your life.
Yeah, when we had the functional medicine doctor, that sounds so ridiculous. Functional medicine specialist, shall we say, but she is a doctor, on the podcast, I think one of the questions we asked her, what are the two things that you say would, if people started taking them, would make the most impact right away? And she said fish oil, and she said magnesium.
Yeah, magnesium is difficult to get from food. And it makes such a difference for sleep, as well as for muscle tension. Those are indeed very important supplements.
So if there are some women, well, I know there are some women listening right now, and if they're seeing themselves in some of the things that you've been talking about, and they're in this place of questioning, what would you say to them? Like, what would be something that you could say to them to help them feel better?
You're not crazy.
Yeah,
that's always nice to hear.
Yeah,
just as a plus.
And you're not alone. I mean, this is happening to a lot of women, but of course, the challenge is knowing how to deal with it. And the traditional pathways don't help a lot of women. Some women get help by HRT, which is fantastic, but a lot of women don't, or some women can't. So yeah, it's a matter of being diligent and, figuring out where does help come from. Healthcare for women has been less than terrific. You often hear the story that if it was a male problem, then it would be resolved very quickly. But
And
the
here
whole
comes the
approach,
See,
patriarchy.
I told you.
yeah,
Boom. We cannot
yeah,
avoid it. And just
yeah,
the fact, and we're going to do an episode, listeners, coming up on medical gaslighting. But I mean,
uh-huh,
the number of times I hear, oh, my labs kept saying they were normal, followed by this
yeah,
like crazy story. I mean, I've
yeah,
lost track at this point. And I mean, let's
yeah,
face it, a lot of the normal, what do you want to say, touch points, just in terms of the ranges, were tested on men, not
yeah,
women, which is big part of the problem. I mean, I personally, I always knew I had a thyroid issue, and everybody told me, oh, your labs are normal, your labs are normal. And I go to an integrated doctor that's also an MD, and he's like, well, I guess they're normal, but if you look at this particular measurement, that's knocking on the door of abnormal. And
yeah,
lo and behold, when he started giving me some medication to fix my thyroid levels, I magically started to feel better. So it's like, well,
yeah,
what's normal range? Right?
yeah,
So, I mean, let's be honest, right? Unfortunately, what that means is insurance only pays for tests that are looking for there's normal ranges. So I
mm-hmm,
want to be clear with people that's one of the not drawbacks of integrated medicine, but the drawbacks of the system for sure.
yeah,
So
yeah.
what would you say to people to expect that they should essentially be paying for a workup? Like, and I realize that costs really widely varies depending on when you're located, but like what I'm trying to avoid is women just dismissing this out of hand because they're just saying, I can't afford this. Like, I get it, it's your health, you have to be able to afford it, but I think it would be helpful for people to kind of have a continuum or baseline of what they should expect to pay, and to understand that this is likely not going to be totally supported by insurance, even if you have good insurance.
Of course, the ROI is fantastic. Regardless of who pays. So I'll just throw out a number of $5,000. $5,000 would include the coaching, the testing, and the treatment, the protocols over a several month period. So $5,000 is, I mean, it's not nothing, but if you think about what it can do for your health, your career, for your life, for your promotability, for your happiness, for your engagement in, quality of life types of things, it's a pretty small price. A number of the women have said to me, if I could have avoided that, 2, 3, 4 years of agony, I would have paid 10 times that. So
And insurance does cover part of it. I mean, it depends on your plan, but a lot of times, like when I saw someone that does what you do, she had tricks and different kinds of things in terms of getting insurance to pay for as much of it as you possibly could. So I definitely wouldn't, listeners, take that number and be like, that's the be all and end all. I mean, I think it's good to understand. But someone like Dinah can help you navigate that crazy system. I don't want to hijack the conversation with insurance because we'll be here all day long.
Well, and I think how much would you be willing to pay to feel better? Like
yeah,
to hit all those markers that you talked about, right? To feel happy, to feel like yourself, to feel, like you want to get out of bed in the morning, to feel like you're not crazy, to not have your physical symptoms. Like how much would you pay for that? And I think when you look at it that way, and when you look at how short life really is, like how many years do you want to waste being miserable?
well,
You
exactly.
know?
There's that.
But it's more than that. But if you don't do something, then some of these conditions can turn into something worse, right?
Yeah.
So heart disease, osteoporosis, right, dementia, and so if you don't do anything about these ailments, then they can become a lot worse. So it's not just a matter of riding it out.
Yeah.
It's also a matter of preventative care and looking for a quality of life in the 60s and 70s and 80s that will be worth living. Yeah.
That is such a good point, because what we do now is going to not infect.
Well,
Yeah, I got the parasites on my mind.
Say.
Affect our longevity and how we are able to be when we are, in our 70s and 80s. Okay, quick pause. Have we talked about the Pod Squad lately?
Oh, the Pod Squad. You mean our email list /VIP lounge /digital wine club?
Exactly. So listeners, if you're not on it yet, you're basically making life harder for yourself when it comes to podcasts.
Like trying to scroll for show notes while speed walking on a treadmill. Wait, what was that link again? Oh, no. Grab the side rails.
Or pulling up that book we mentioned while you're in the Starbucks line and then realizing everybody else moved up 3 cars and now you're that woman.
We've all been there. That's why we made the Pod Squad. You'll get new episode alerts every week with direct links. Easy to listen, easy to share.
And show notes straight to your inbox. So when we drop a life-changing product, book, hot tip, or yummy new drink, you're not rummaging through your memory like a woman searching for her reading glasses when they're on top of her head.
It's organized, it's helpful, it's for you, babes.
So join the Pod Squad. The link is in the show notes. Just tap it.
Snacks, sarcasm, solidarity.
And obviously, fighting the patriarchy.
We write at dawn.
So I want to go back to your coaching piece because I am a coach as well. And I love that you have a coaching component to your package. What does that look like? Because I just love that women can continue to get support. It's not like you give them their test results, give them their protocols and say, good luck. So just briefly, what does your coaching look like in terms of what you offer?
Yeah, well, the coaching is basically meet every 2 weeks, so we have different things to talk about every 2 weeks. And so first of all, it's the intake and finding out what's causing problems. And then we get the tests done. And then I talk about the results of the tests, and then we develop the protocols. And then we talk every 2 weeks to see how that's landing, right? If there are some things that are going well, some things that are still a bit of an issue, then we can make a bit of an adjustment. I also recommend movement. And this, of course, movement is a huge proponent to protect against osteoporosis, especially weight bearing, all right? So I advocate for the kind of 10,000 steps a day along with weights. And so that's an important thing. And then people feel so much better, right? Then the energy goes way up. And then I also say, well, this is probably the first time that you've ever had to take so much care of yourself, right? You're so busy caring for other people, which tends to be what women do, that this time you're the one who needs to be taken care of. And after all, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? It's a matter of being able to fill up your own cup and be well so that you can continue with some of the other things that you want to do. So there's a mindset piece to it, right? There's a way of encouraging people to take control of certain things, let go certain things, think of things in maybe a slightly different frame, so that they can, so that they don't have guilty feelings about taking care of themselves. That happens so often. I can't even, I just have to stress that women are reluctant to take the time and the money to make themselves feel better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I see that a lot in the coaching that I do. And I don't come from a medical perspective. I come from, more of like a mental health and well-being perspective. But we are always last on our own lists. And I'm glad you brought the money piece up too, because not only do we feel guilty about the time that we're devoting to ourselves, or that we feel like we're taking away from other people, but it's the money. We have such a hard time spending money on ourselves in that way. Whereas we would have no problem spending $5,000 on our kids, right? For something. But we have a very, very difficult time. So I'm glad you brought that piece up.
So when we talked to Dr. McCarthy, she, like I said, we were like, okay, what's one thing women can do like right now? What's one thing that you think that women should do after listening to this that will have a great effect on on how they're functioning in life.
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is sleep. And being able to, to manage your sleep better, to start working on what that might look like. And of course, it's different. Sleep hygiene, of course, is a bit different for different people. But that supports so many different systems. And I know there are some of the women that I see that do take a lot of precautions. They stop with the screens. They don't eat for 3 hours before they go to bed. They have a cool room, dark room, all these great things to do. And then they lie in bed and they can't sleep. Or they go to sleep for an hour or so and then they wake up. So that's a message, right? That's a biochemical signal that's saying we've got some other imbalances going on here. So sleep is so important. And if you're not doing, if you're not getting sleep, then I would say time to do something, time to grab hold of this and problem solve. It's not sustainable to continue, certainly in high performing functions without sleep.
We actually did a sleep episode. We did a whole episode on sleep because it's so true. And in perimenopause and menopause, sleep is very elusive.
Yes, we learned all sorts of fun terms like revenge, bedtime, sleep procrastination.
So is there anything, Dinah, that we have not hit on that you really want our listeners to hear? Or do you feel like we've covered the bases?
Well, there's one thing that goes into mindset that I'd like to add. And one of the things that I absolutely adore seeing with the women that I work with is once they start feeling better, they start to take control of their lives in a way that they didn't before. And, we have this opportunity when women get to their, 40s, 50s, they are usually in a position where they have an empty nest, where they have different responsibilities. They're perhaps not so much in the sandwich position anymore, where parents perhaps are no longer with them. And so they've got this opportunity to take stock of their lives and to determine that they're in control, that they can make some pretty key decisions. And I sort of use myself as an example because I decided that I didn't want to stay in cold climates anymore. I was going to move to a nice climate. And now, I still do my work and I have way more friends than I ever did before. And I absolutely adore my life in Panama. So, it's not sort of an empty thought. It's a pretty tangible thing, and it doesn't have to be move away. It can be start a new business. It can be change jobs. It can be write a book. It can be develop a travel agenda that you want to do. It can be a lot of different things, but it's an opportunity to just to take control of life and to live it to the fullest. And women are so good at that. Once they grab hold of that notion and they feel well enough to to actually do that, then life becomes just a whole lot better.
I mean, I was going to say, in the next segment, like, well, what do you want our listeners to walk away with? But I'm like, that's a mic drop moment. I love the idea that once you start really focusing on yourself, putting energy and time and money into yourself, you not only do you feel better physically, but it's like the world opens up. And I feel like that's what women who are in their 40s and especially 50s and 60s need to hear.
Yeah.
Because I think we get in this weird limbo phase, and I'm going to speak for myself and my clients and other women in my communities. And it's like, we don't really know what to do, and maybe we are having some weird physical stuff happening and we're just like, what do we do? But you're helping them with direction. Like you're giving them direction that's not only going to help them physically, but also mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And that's so freaking exciting.
And I think that's honestly, I think menopause is a wake up call for women. because they've always been able to gut it out or multitask or do whatever. And this is like, in some cases, the first thing that's happened to them where that ain't gonna fly. Like, you have to pause and figure it out one way or another, because it affects so many different parts of who you are, your identity, your body, like all those things. So, I don't know why we're surprised when a large, what I want to say, a factor in our lives that affects so many things needs an integrated solution on that level.
Yeah, there's another small thing that I'd like to add, and that is to talk to your spouse, your partner, whatever, about this. And I think a lot of women are hesitant about that because they don't really know what's going on themselves. Even if there is that kind of mystery or that lack of understanding, even bringing a spouse into that picture will help, just because they're probably even more confused about what's going on. And so spouses can be very supportive, but if they don't understand what's going on, then that makes that task a lot more difficult. So that communication factor is really important. And now we're reaching a point in the media and social media and everywhere where this is becoming a much more popular topic to talk about. And some of the taboos are falling away. So that helps in talking to friends and whatnot. But when it happened to me, my friends were in the dark, didn't know. My mother was happy to talk to me, but it wasn't helpful because she didn't know either, right?
Sucks to be you. Good luck.
Well, she couldn't connect the dots that had happened to her, right?
Yeah.
So she was willing, but not ultimately very helpful. So that communication factor is a big piece, and it's one that doesn't get a lot of attention.
Such a good point. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah, talk to your partners, even if you're just saying, "Hey, I don't know what's going on, but this is how I'm feeling, or this is what I think is going on, or I need to find out what's going on." But yeah, fun fact: my ex-husband, he told our when we were in marriage counseling before we got divorced, he came in with all this literature on menopause and how that was the reason that that I wanted a divorce.
Well,
and I mean, looking back, I'm sure there were some things I was going through. I was perimenopausal that were definitely contributing. My ability to give zero fucks about how he felt.
Well, and,
sorry, I'm laughing, but
without going down the rabbit hole, how about taking some resposability?
Well, there's that.
Hence the reason you're divorced.
There's
we'll
that.
Just leave it
but
there.
I mean, but literally,
Wow,
how when
crazy.
your estrogen leaves, you're not as amenable and you're not as compliant anymore. And so that was literally at play. I was speaking my mind and saying what was going on, and yes, he chose not to take responsibility, but to blame it on menopause. And for sure, there were definitely biological things happening, but that was not the reason that our marriage crumbled. But I digress. So Dinah,
patriarchy.
Thank you so much for joining us.
You.
If you could sometimes we do like a little, we haven't done it in a while, but what do we call it? Not hot takes. Rapid fire. Rapid fire. If there are 3 things you could just say really quick that you really want to make sure that women leave this episode with, what would those 3 things be?
That would be: listen to your body, trust yourself, and get help.
What else needs to be said?
So good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dinah, for joining us. This was a great conversation. Listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. We know that you have a choice on how you spend your time, and we appreciate that you take us along for the ride. So, Dinah, tell people if they heard something that you said that is intriguing to them, or they feel like they want to seek you out, where can they find you?
Well, I have a website with some educational information and some research, some recordings, some ways to contact me. And the website is holisticnutritionlifestyle.com.
That'll be in the show notes.
And y'all know how to contact us, but in case you've been under a rock for, God, we're pushing 100 episodes. Whoop, whoop. So,
Whoop, whoop.
Yep, drinksforthegirlspodcast.com is where you can find us any way that you wish. Sign up for our wonderful Pod Squad email. Tell us what you're thinking.
Thank you for being here, listeners. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.